The less you care, the more they chase. The colder you get, the hotter their curiosity burns. That's the twisted truth no one wants to admit. When you finally stop giving a damn, that's when they start losing their mind. It's like reverse gravity. You pulled and pulled, trying to keep them close. But the moment you let go, they started floating back, panicking, spinning, scrambling for your attention. Welcome to the real psychology of detachment. If you've ever asked yourself, should I act like I don't care? Yes, my friend, do it. It works fast and it works hard, especially when you're dealing with people who feed off your reaction. Hey folks, imagine this. You're a flame in a cold room. They've been warming their hands by your fire for months, maybe even years. But instead of tending to you, they assumed you'd always be lit. They took off their coat, got comfortable, started using your warmth like it was owed to them. And one day, you just go quiet. No more heat, no more glow, just stillness, silence. Now they're shivering in a space they never bothered to protect. That's the moment they feel it. Not when you spoke, but when you stopped. You see, we've been sold a lie, that caring more makes them stay, that chasing harder wins them back, that reacting means you still have a chance. Let me break that myth for you right now. The person who wins isn't the one who shouts, cries, or explains. It's the one who goes silent, smiles, and watches from a distance. Because nothing confuses a manipulator more than someone who used to beg, suddenly not caring anymore. Some of y'all are out here giving Oscar-worthy performances, overthinking every text, breaking your own heart trying to look unbothered while secretly burning inside. But here's the twist. Real detachment doesn't mean acting like you don't care. It means actually not caring. It's not a costume. It's not a trick. It's a mindset. And when you live in that mindset, everything changes. People can feel when your energy shifts. They know when the spotlight moves off them. It's like emotional Wi-Fi. They can sense it when you've logged out. You don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to post cryptic stories. You don't need to throw shade. Your silence, your calm, your peace, it screams louder than any caption ever could. Here's the thing, my friends. They don't miss you. They miss control over you. They don't regret what they did. They regret that it didn't break you. And the moment you start acting like you don't care, it triggers their deepest insecurity. That maybe, just maybe, they weren't that important to you after all. Act like you don't care, and suddenly they'll care more than ever. They'll check your status, watch your stories, talk to mutuals, even try to bait you with posts, because silence is a mirror. And when you stop reacting, they're forced to look at their own reflection. And that, my friends, is where the panic begins. This isn't about being heartless. It's about having heart, but giving it to the right people. It's about protecting your peace like a locked vault. It's about rising without drama, loving without attachment, and leaving without noise. Because when you stop pouring into the wrong cups, your life starts overflowing. So remember this. You don't owe closure, explanations, or performance. You owe yourself peace. And peace isn't loud. It's silent, strong, and unforgettable. Your affirmation for today is simple. I don't chase. Type it in the comments if you're claiming back your emotional power. Show the algorithm, show the world, and most importantly, show yourself. Now press that like button, hit subscribe, and stay with me. We're just getting started. Number 1, they took your care for granted. Now withdraw it like power. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop showing up. Because when you stop showing up for people who only noticed you when they needed you, they start to panic. That's the paradox. That's the reversal. Your care was never just care, it was currency. And for a long time, they were cashing it in like it had no cost. You gave your time, your attention, your patience, your presence for free. You gave your reactions, your check-ins, your "Are you okay?" texts, even after they ghosted you, overlooked you, or breadcrumbed you. But here's the hard truth, my friend. They were never afraid of losing you. They were afraid of losing access to you. They weren't honoring your presence. They were just addicted to the power of being able to ignore it. And that's where the game flips. Imagine being a lighthouse, strong, bright, always on. Through every storm, through every night, you stayed lit. You became the guide, the safety net, the emotional home. But they weren't docking their ship. They were just passing by, waving when it suited them. And one day, without warning, you turn off the light, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Now the sea feels different. Now the silence grows louder. Now they realize they needed that light more than they ever admitted. That's what happens when you act like you don't care. That's what happens when you take your energy back. You don't need to slam a door, you just stop holding it open. And suddenly, the same people who acted like your attention meant nothing are the ones who feel lost without it. And you might ask, but isn't that cruel? Doesn't that make me just like them? No, and here's why. You're not doing it to manipulate. You're doing it to survive. There's a difference between silent revenge and sacred withdrawal. You're not playing games. You're reclaiming your worth. And if they mistake your peace for punishment, that just means they were never listening to your pain in the first place. They'll say, "You've changed." Yes, you have. You went from overgiving to observing, from chasing to choosing, from explaining your value to embodying it. And it's hard, isn't it? That moment you realize you were the one keeping it all together, that your effort was the glue, that your consistency was the rhythm they danced to. But now that you've stepped back, they don't know the steps anymore. Now they're out of sync, out of touch, out of access. This part, the letting go, it's not glamorous. It's not loud. It's lonely. Your mind will play tricks on you. What if they come back? What if I made a mistake? What if they actually cared? But listen closely. If they cared, they wouldn't have needed your withdrawal to realize it. They wouldn't have needed your absence to measure your value. The truth is, people notice real fast when you stop reacting. Because silence is uncomfortable for those who were addicted to your noise. Suddenly, there's nothing to push against. No argument, no apology, no performance. And that leaves them with the only thing they never wanted to face, themselves. And I know you cared deeply. You wanted to fix it, to talk it out, to explain your side. You wanted them to finally get it. But here's the truth bomb. If they didn't understand your silence, they were never really listening to your words either. You don't need to explain peace to someone who thrives on chaos. And you don't need to justify your detachment to someone who took your presence for granted. Your job now isn't to convince them. It's to cleanse yourself, to detox from the illusion that you had to keep proving yourself to be loved. You don't. You never did. The moment you stop handing out your care like coupons, they start to realize it was never cheap. It was rare, it was powerful, it was divine. And now you take that power back. You stop being the emotional supplier for someone else's ego addiction. You stop being the caretaker of a connection that only nurtured them. You stop being the light in a space that never bothered to keep you warm. You're not wrong for pulling back. You're not bad for going quiet. You're not heartless for moving on without drama. You're wise, you're strong, and you're finally seeing that the love you were giving away is the love you needed to give yourself. So let them sit in that silence. Let them wonder why the room feels colder. Let them miss the warmth they treated like background noise. Because you don't get to disrespect someone's care and still expect access to their soul. That's not how this works anymore. The lighthouse doesn't follow the ships. It stands tall. It turns off for no one unless the ocean proves it's worthy. So here's your truth today. You didn't lose them. You lost a version of yourself who thought you had to earn love by overextending. And now, you're free. Your new power, it's not in caring less. It's in caring smarter. It's in choosing when, where, and for whom your light shines. You don't have to beg to be seen. You are the visibility. So type this in the comments if you're done begging for attention, if you're ready to reclaim your energy, and if you're ready to rise in silence. I don't chase. Write it. Show yourself. Show the ones who thought they broke you. Show the algorithm. And more than anything, show the new version of you that's coming next. Because now that you've pulled your energy back, the story's about to change. Stay with me. What comes next will shake the very ground they once stood on. Number 2, detachment isn't cold. It's clarity. They'll call you heartless the moment you stop giving them access to a heart they never earned. That's what happens, isn't it? The second you stop reacting, stop caring out loud, stop showing up like a personal emotional ambulance every time they stub their ego, they label you cold. But they never called you warm when you were giving everything. They never thanked you for the patience, the overthinking, the sleepless nights you poured into trying to understand someone who didn't even try to understand you. So let's break this lie right now. Detachment isn't cold, it's clarity. It's the moment your fog lifts and you finally see the connection for what it really was, not what you romanticized in your mind. You start to notice the patterns. You start to spot the manipulation. You start to understand that you weren't crazy. You were just being played by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. And now you don't flinch when they post. You don't chase every, "Hey, how have you been?" breadcrumb like it's a lifeline. You don't take the bait. You don't need to. Because the moment you started acting like you don't care was the exact moment you started healing. Imagine your emotions were once a tangled necklace, knotted, pulled, looped through confusion, over apologies, self-blame. Detachment is like slowly unknotting that necklace, pulling it gently apart, thread by thread, until it hangs clean, straight, untangled. That's clarity. That's not bitterness. That's emotional sobriety. And yes, it's hard, because there's this little voice inside you, maybe from childhood, maybe from your last toxic relationship, that says, "If I don't care, does that mean I'm mean?" No, my friend. It means you finally stopped sacrificing your peace just to look polite. You've spent too long teaching people how to mistreat you by rewarding them with access every time they gave you the bare minimum. And now they're confused. Why? Because you're not playing the role anymore. People will call you cold when they can't warm themselves with your light. They'll say, "You've changed," when you stop letting them treat you like an emotional doormat. But that's not on you. That's on them. You didn't get cold. You got clear. Clarity isn't about being above emotions. It's about choosing which ones get to stay. It's about being the bouncer of your own peace and telling toxicity it's no longer on the guest list. You're not suppressing your feelings. You're elevating your standards. There's a massive difference. And that's what scares them, because when you were emotionally attached, you were predictable. When you cared too much, you were programmable. But now they don't know what version of you they're going to get, because you're no longer reacting on cue. They say silence is golden, but in your case, it's platinum. It's the upgrade. It's the quiet proof that you've finally stepped into your power, that you no longer argue with people committed to misunderstanding you, that you've stopped proving your worth to people who never knew how to hold it in the first place. You're not cold, you're focused. You're not bitter, you're better. You're not heartless. You're just done handing it to people who only ever used it as leverage. And here's the beautiful twist. Detachment isn't the end of love. It's the beginning of real love. Because only when you detach from needing love from the wrong people do you finally have room to give it to yourself and receive it from those who actually deserve it. They wanted you emotional because that made you easy to predict. But now that you've gone still, now that your waters don't ripple at their every move, they're lost in your calm, drowning in the silence, scared of the space they once begged for. You don't need to explain this evolution to anyone. You don't need to justify your quiet. You don't need to convince them that you're healing. Let your peace be proof. Let your non-reaction be the thunder. Let your detachment do the speaking. Because detachment doesn't mean you don't feel. It means you've learned to feel without falling. It means you've taught your soul that not every storm is worth standing in. So here's your reminder, right here, right now. You are not cold. You are clear. And if they can't handle your clarity, they were never built to handle your love either. Type this in the comments if you're done explaining your peace to people who never earned your presence. I choose clarity. Write it to show yourself, show your strength, show them you've evolved. And keep watching, because what's coming next isn't silence, it's your rise. Number 3, they expected your reaction, so your silence hits like thunder. The loudest sound they'll ever hear is the silence of someone who finally stopped caring. They were waiting for it, weren't they? The scene, the outburst, the emotional collapse that would confirm their importance in your life. They expected the late-night messages, the voice notes filled with pain, the desperate attempts to make sense of it all. They were ready to bask in the drama, to feed on your confusion, your heartache, your need for closure. Because that's what they were used to. That was the dynamic. They poke, you react. They disappear, you chase. They disappoint, you forgive. And that cycle, it kept them feeling powerful until you went quiet. No response, no confrontation, no emotional display, just stillness. That was the first thing that shook them, the realization that you weren't playing your part anymore, that the script they'd used 100 times suddenly didn't work. It's like trying to light a fire with wet matches, flick, 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 but nothing burns. You, who once exploded with emotion, are now calm. You, who once begged to be heard, are now silent. And that silence? It's not peaceful to them. It's terrifying. Imagine they're in a dark room where they once controlled the light. All it took was a look, a text, a breadcrumb to get your spark. But now they're fumbling, reaching for switches that no longer exist. You've unplugged the connection. You're no longer a live wire they can shock for attention, and that's when it hits them, not in volume, but in weight. The silence becomes heavier than any argument. It becomes thunder in their ears. Every second you don't respond is a second their illusion of control falls apart. They don't understand it. Why didn't you react? Why aren't you angry? Why are you just gone? Because, my friend, you've evolved. You've graduated from proving your worth to protecting it. You've stopped handing over your emotions to people who only wanted them when it served their ego. They thought your reaction defined your care, but it never did. Now you've realized that not every insult deserves an answer, and not every betrayal deserves a breakdown. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all. They'll post stories, they'll watch yours, they'll suddenly like your photos, message you with fake casualness, try to bait you into caring again, because silence creates a vacuum, and in that vacuum they start hearing the truth they never wanted to face. They lost you, not because you yelled, not because you argued, but because you stopped, quietly, intentionally, completely. And that, more than anything, is what drives them insane. Because it wasn't your voice that gave them comfort, it was your availability, your energy, your willingness to engage. And now that you've withdrawn all of that, they're left with their own echo. A hollow, haunting realization that you no longer care the way you used to. That your calm is not confusion, it's closure. That your silence is not sadness, it's strength. Of course, it's not easy. There's a part of you that wants to speak, to defend, to make them understand. But understand this, if they needed your silence to finally pay attention, they never deserved your voice in the first place. You don't owe them one more moment of your presence. You don't need to explain peace to someone who chose chaos. You're not weak for going quiet. You're wise. You're not heartless for walking away. You're healing. You didn't choose silence to be cruel. You chose it because you finally realized that real power doesn't scream. It stands still. And stillness speaks louder than anything you could ever say. Let them feel it. Let them wander through the silence they created. Let them search for a reaction they'll never get, because your silence is now the mirror to their behavior, and in that reflection, they'll see the cost of underestimating you. So type this in the comments to seal it in your soul. My silence is thunder. Let it ring. Let it echo. Let it show the world that you don't need to raise your voice to raise your standard. And stay with me, because what's coming next will shake the very ground they thought you'd never walk away from. Number 4. Distance isn't empty, it's heavy. Sometimes the loudest room is the one you're no longer standing in. They thought distance meant silence. That when you stopped calling, stopped texting, stopped showing up with all your warmth, it was just space. A pause. Something they could one day walk back into like nothing ever happened. But what they didn't understand is that distance isn't empty. It's heavy, it carries weight, emotional gravity, a silence so thick it presses on the soul. And now they feel it, every inch of it. The cold where your warmth used to be. The absence that echoes louder than any argument ever could. They're sitting with the memory of you, trying to pretend it's not haunting them, but it is. You didn't just walk away. You left the air different. You didn't slam the door. You just stopped standing in it. And now every hallway feels haunted with what they didn't say, what they didn't do, what they took for granted while you were still within reach. See, when you care, your presence is a gift they stop noticing, but the second you remove it, it becomes a curse they can't forget. Because people don't feel your value when you're pouring it out on tap. They feel it when you turn it off. And they feel it now. In the mornings when they reach for their phone and there's no message. In the evenings when the silence stretches out and your voice isn't filling the empty space anymore. They feel the heaviness of your distance in the same way a room changes when a candle burns out. Not with noise, but with the quiet collapse of light. And maybe right now you're wondering, do they even care? You want to believe they're unaffected, that they moved on like you never mattered. But don't be fooled by the performance. The jokes, the selfies, the social media games, that's surface, a show, a cover-up. The real reaction, it's happening behind the scenes, in the silence, in their sudden hesitation before posting, in their eyes when your name flashes across a conversation. In the way they replay your last moments together, like a loop they can't escape. Because here's the truth, my friend, they didn't expect you to go quiet. They didn't think you'd have the strength to hold the line. They thought you'd stay, even while being ignored, that you'd keep giving, even when it wasn't returned. But you shocked them. You did the one thing they never prepared for. You didn't beg. You just vanished. And that's what makes the distance so damn heavy. It's not just that you're gone, it's that they know it's their fault, that they pushed away someone who would have done anything for them, that they drained the well dry and are now shocked there's no water left. Your silence is no longer a reaction, it's a reflection of their choices, of their selfishness, of everything they didn't do when they had the chance. So now they carry that weight, not in guilt, they're not ready to admit guilt yet, but in discomfort, restlessness, that nagging feeling that something's missing but they can't touch it, can't control it, can't fix it. Because you're not giving them the chance, and that's what drives them mad. You might be tempted to go back, to soften, to explain, but don't. They need to feel this. This is how the lesson gets in. This is where their transformation begins, if it ever will. Not when you tell them what they lost, but when they feel the hole that your energy used to fill. And make no mistake, it was energy, pure, steady, beautiful energy. You didn't just show up in their life, you held parts of it together. And now that you've stepped away, everything is a little less stable, a little less alive. Distance isn't running away, it's a boundary. It's a line drawn in the sand that says, you don't get to access me unless you know how to value me. And if they're not willing to learn that, then let them sit in the stillness. Let them stumble through the silence. Let them miss what they thought would always be there. You're not cold for pulling back. You're not cruel for disappearing. You're disciplined, you're self-respecting, you're awake. And the more distance you create, the clearer the truth becomes, not just for them, but for you. So type this in the comments if you're done shrinking your light just to stay close to people who dim it. My distance has weight. Let it be your shield. Let it be your sword. Let it remind the world and yourself that your absence is not nothing. It's everything they never appreciated, now echoing in the silence they created. And we're not done. Stay with me. What comes next will be the part they never saw coming. Number 5. When you detach, they start performing for your attention. The moment you stop watching, they start acting. It's wild, isn't it? You spent months, or maybe even years, trying to earn their attention, their affection, their time. You were consistent, available, present, and still they treated your loyalty like background noise. You posted something deep, they barely looked. You opened up your heart, they shrugged it off. But the moment you go silent, the moment you stop checking in, stop reacting, stop watching their life from the sidelines, suddenly they turn into performers. Now they're posting with purpose, not for joy, for you. Flashy captions, half-dressed selfies, emotional bait disguised as song lyrics. And it's not because they're healed. It's not because they're doing well. It's because you're no longer applauding. Your energy, your validation, your attention. It used to be their oxygen, and now they're gasping without it. They never appreciated your presence, but the moment you detach, they start chasing your gaze, even if they won't admit it, even if it looks casual, even if it's masked in sarcasm or just living my life. Deep down, they're wondering, are they watching? Did they see this story? Will this get a reaction? And your silence. It's eating them alive. Because here's the truth, you were never the problem. You were the mirror. You reflected back to them the parts they didn't want to face, the parts that were lazy, inconsistent, manipulative. And when you stopped showing up, they were left alone with their own emptiness. No more distraction, no more soft landings, no more emotional comfort food in the form of your attention. So they scramble, they post louder, they dress bolder, they start liking your old photos, watching your stories without saying a word. They become spectators to your peace while pretending they're unbothered. But you see through it now. You know the game. When someone suddenly gets loud after you go quiet, it's not growth, it's panic. Imagine a stage. For the longest time, you were in the audience, clapping for them even when they didn't show up for you, even when they gave half effort, half love, half truth. You gave full attention. And now the theater's empty. You've left the building. You're no longer front row, giving standing ovations to someone who never deserved the spotlight. And now they're dancing, yelling, posting, crying. For an audience that doesn't exist, that's what detachment does. It flips the power. And some part of them thought you'd never leave, that they could ghost you and you'd still come back, that they could be hot and cold and you'd still burn steady. But now you've pulled your energy back. Not as a game, not to get revenge, but because you finally realized you were showing up for someone who never showed up for themselves. It's strange how the ones who treat you like you're invisible suddenly panic when you stop looking. They didn't want you. They wanted your attention. They wanted your reaction, your obsession, your emotional labor. But your soul has grown too expensive for that now. You're no longer funding their ego with your heartbreak. Let them perform, let them post, let them pretend. Your silence is louder than their entire act. And trust me, they feel it, because when you detach, you become unpredictable. And that's their worst fear, not knowing where you stand, not knowing if you still care, not knowing if you've moved on. And that unknown, it eats away at them like a question they can't answer. This is when your power begins. Not in proving a point, not in clapping back, but in staying calm while they unravel, trying to get your attention again. Because what they miss now isn't just you. It's the version of you that loved them despite everything, and they know they can't reach that version again, not with stories, not with likes, not with new people they're trying to use to replace your energy. You've pulled away, not because you're bitter, but because you've finally started to protect your peace like it's priceless. Because it is. You are. And that protection, that detachment, that refusal to engage in games anymore, that's what makes you untouchable. So let them post, let them pretend they're fine, let them dance on the stage you left behind. Your silence is your strength now. Type this in the comments if you've stopped reacting and started rising. I'm not bait, I'm the boundary. Say it to remind yourself who you are, to show them you're done playing small, and stay with me, because the next shift, that's when the guilt hits and the spiral begins. Number 6, not caring forces them to see what they did. You didn't get even, you got honest. And honesty in silence is what makes them squirm. You didn't scream, you didn't beg, you didn't send a long paragraph trying to explain what they already knew. You just stopped caring, or at least you stopped caring out loud. And that's what hit them harder than any revenge plan ever could. Because when you go quiet, not from anger but from clarity, they're forced to sit in the mess they made. No distraction, no reaction, just the raw weight of their own choices staring back at them. For the first time, there's no one left to blame. No one left to twist the narrative. They can't point the finger at your overreaction or your drama or your sensitivity. Because now, there's nothing to react to, nothing to fight, nothing to excuse, just stillness. And in that stillness, they meet the one thing they've been running from: accountability. See, when you were still in it, still trying, still hoping, still fixing, they had the luxury of ignoring their own behavior. Your effort made it easy. Your love made it comfortable. Even your pain gave them power. But when you stopped caring, when you pulled back without explanation, they lost their favorite distraction, your emotional labor. And now they're left alone, with themselves. It's like a house they trashed, thinking the cleaner would always come back. But now the cleaner's gone, and they're standing knee-deep in their own mess. That's the moment their stomach turns. That's the moment the guilt creeps in, not because you punished them, but because your absence became a mirror. And what they see in that mirror, it's not flattering. They see the love they overlooked, the kindness they mishandled, the loyalty they thought would last forever. They remember the texts they ignored, the tone they used, the emotional shortcuts they took. And for the first time, they're starting to get it, not because you explained it again, but because your silence became the teacher. This is what happens when you detach, not with hate, not with bitterness, but with a quiet that demands self-reflection. They don't have access to your pain anymore. They don't get to use your emotions to soothe their conscience. Now they have to feel it for real, and that's a brand of regret they never saw coming. You might think, but they're not showing it, they look fine. They're posting, partying, pretending. But make no mistake, the loudest performances always come from the people with the most to hide. The more they act like it doesn't hurt, the more you can be sure it does. Because if they really didn't care, they wouldn't need to prove it. They're not heartbroken that you walked away. They're heartbroken that they didn't believe you would. They assumed you'd always come back. That they could treat you like an option, and you'd keep making them a priority. That they could test your limits, and you'd always fold. But not this time. This time, you became the lesson. And the best part? You didn't have to lift a finger. You didn't have to raise your voice. You didn't have to write a final monologue or announce your departure like some dramatic send-off. You just got quiet. You let your energy exit the room. And suddenly, they were left in a silence they couldn't control. That silence. It speaks volumes. It whispers truths in their ear at 2 a.m. when the noise fades. It lives in the pauses between their laughter. It lingers in the faces of the people they're trying to use as replacements. Because guilt doesn't hit when someone walks away. It hits when they realize why. You became the consequence of their choices, and no amount of pretending, posting, or pushing blame can erase the moment they finally understood. They didn't just lose you, they destroyed the space where love lived, and that space, it's now locked, not in anger, in wisdom. So if you're sitting there wondering if your silence matters, it does. If you're wondering whether your detachment is felt, it is. Not caring isn't cruel, it's clarity. It's the final boundary between self-respect and self-destruction. And now they feel the weight, not because you forced them to, but because they force themselves. Type this in the comments if you're done explaining your worth to people who only understood it when you left. Their guilt is not mine. Say it for the version of you that cared too long. Say it to remind them and yourself that peace begins where performance ends. And stay with me, because what's coming next is the part where you rise, and they realize it wasn't you they needed, it was the peace you brought. Number 7, you reclaim power by not needing closure. Closure isn't something they give you, it's something you decide to no longer need. For the longest time, you were waiting for the ending, a proper one, a real conversation, an apology, an explanation, something to help your mind understand what your heart already felt, that it was over, that they weren't coming back, that what you gave they would never be able to return in the same way. But that closure, it never came, and it probably never will, because the kind of people who leave you confused are rarely brave enough to give you clarity. You kept thinking, if I could just talk to them one more time, maybe they'll finally understand. Maybe they'll finally say sorry. Maybe they'll give me the truth. But here's the truth they won't tell you. They already know what they did. They're just too comfortable in denial to say it out loud. They won't admit it, because that would mean facing the very part of themselves they've spent years hiding behind charm, avoidance, and ego. So instead, they leave you with fragments, half sentences, unfinished stories, empty exits. But guess what? That's not your burden anymore, because real power comes the day you decide that closure isn't something they can hold over you, it's something you reclaim. And how do you reclaim it? By no longer waiting, by refusing to let your peace depend on someone else's apology, by closing the chapter yourself without needing their permission. It's like walking away from a movie that had no final scene. At first it feels incomplete, like something's missing. But after a while, you realize the ending wasn't missing, it just wasn't given. And that's okay, because you're not a character in their story anymore. You're the author of your own now. And authors don't wait around for someone else to write the last line. They take the pen, turn the page, and start something better. Let's be real. Closure was never about answers. It was about validation, about wanting to believe that your time, your love, your loyalty actually mattered to them. But here's the hard truth you finally get to swallow with power. You don't need someone to acknowledge your worth for it to exist. Your love mattered because you gave it. Your loyalty was rare because you lived it. And their silence? That's not a reflection of your value. It's a confession of their incapacity. When you stop chasing closure, you start building peace. When you stop asking why, you start saying, thank you. Thank you for the lesson. Thank you for the silence that revealed everything the words never could. Thank you for removing yourself so I could return to myself. Because the irony, you weren't asking for closure. You were asking for respect. And once you realize they can't give you that, the rest becomes very, very clear. Imagine walking through a door they slammed but never locked. You could stand there for years, knocking, waiting, begging, or you could turn around and walk into a whole new room, a bigger one, a brighter one. That's what this is now. You're not waiting at closed doors anymore. You're walking into your future. And yes, it hurts. Yes, your mind still replays it sometimes. That's normal. That's human. But don't mistake the echoes of your attachment for a sign to go back. The mind replays what the soul is still releasing. Let it pass through. Don't hold on to it. You've got more powerful things to carry now, like your dignity, your energy, your freedom. Closure isn't a message, it's a decision. And now, you've decided. You're done trying to fix what someone else broke with their silence. You're done handing your power to people who didn't know how to hold it. You're done needing answers from people who never asked you the right questions. So if they're out there still pretending they did nothing wrong, let them. That's their movie. You've left the set. You've stopped needing the ending. You've written your own. Type this in the comments if you're choosing peace over permission. I don't need closure. Say it for the version of you that used to wait by the phone. Say it for the nights you stayed up wondering what you did wrong. Say it because you're finally free. And stay with me, because the final chapter, that's the one where you rise without looking back. Number 8. When you stop caring, you rise. They didn't break you, they revealed you. There's a strange kind of peace that shows up the moment you stop caring, not pretending, not performing indifference while secretly hurting. No, genuinely not caring anymore. That's when the air shifts. That's when your shoulders drop. That's when you look around and realize you've outgrown the room you were once begging to stay in. Because when you stop caring, you stop chasing. You stop over-explaining. You stop rehearsing what you'd say if they finally reached out. And instead, you just live. And that life, it starts to glow in ways it never could when your energy was tangled in their chaos. You don't post for their attention anymore. You don't check their page. You don't look for signs in their silence. You stop wondering, do they miss me? And start asking, do I even miss them? Or just the version of me who hadn't healed yet? Not caring isn't cruel. It's clean, it's quiet, it's powerful. It's that moment a rocket leaves the atmosphere. No noise, no looking back, just upward motion. And they feel it. They always do. Because people can sense when they've lost emotional access to someone who once gave it freely. So let them feel the absence. Let them watch you rise. Let them guess how you're doing without ever getting the answer. Because this is your arrival. You're no longer playing the role they wrote for you. You're writing your own script now, and it doesn't include chasing people who lost the privilege of being chased. Type this final affirmation in the comments and let the world feel your shift. I rise in silence. Like this video if you felt seen. Subscribe for more truth that heals, and share this with someone who's ready to stop hurting and start rising. This isn't the end of your story, it's the beginning of the best chapter you've ever lived.